I have a couple questions.
Okay.
One concerns,
Hopefully
I think,
a couple of answers.
well, you'll have an answer, even if that's I don't fucking know. One concerns the podcast and one doesn't. I mean, necessarily. So let me get to that one first.
Sure.
When do you put up your Christmas tree?
Usually after Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Because there's too much shit going on in the house to do it during Thanksgiving.
Also, that's November.
Right. It's still November, right? So, usually in between the end of Thanksgiving and before,
like the first week of December.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, which is like what normal people do, I think. Well, I'm not sure. Maybe we're the non-normal people now, because if you haven't seen, and look, this episode won't come out for a couple weeks, so this will be moot, but I need to get it off my chest. Why am I fucking surrounded by Christmas decorations, and it is, at time of recording, November 16th?
Because...
look, I'm tired of this shit.
Stop your personal vendetta against Christmas. Brock,
the holidays.
the happiest of seasons. I don't know, man. I mean, look, there's so much to be angry about in this world.
I know. So that's why I thought we would dedicate our time to what's going on in the Middle East.
Right. Let's figure this shit out. Like, somebody needs to. And if it's not us, who? And if not,
really,
when? And
two white guys with microphones and a fucking platform.
Finally.
Right, finally.
No one asked us, but we're gonna do it.
Okay. All right. An actual question about this podcast and about the films today. Well, let me just say this first. So today we're going to be looking at the new film by David Fincher, The Killer, and we're going to start our series on Hal Hartley by looking at The Unbelievable Truth and Trust. The first two films in a kind of loose trilogy that he didn't really agree was a trilogy until later on, and it was kind of like retconned at that point. So, but
it feels like there's a lot of things in that vein for him. Like, yeah, whatever. You guys want to call it that? Cool. No worries.
Yeah, sure. But that seems like him just in general, right?
Right.
But here's a question I have that'll lead us into, I think, further discussion, and also kind of builds on something we talked about last time. Why do we insist on calling things masterpieces or perfection or stone cold genius? Why do we need to crown mediocrity from those who have done better work in the past?
To answer the question, I don't know. Hyperbole seems like it means, I guess, not to quote The Incredibles, but if everyone's special, then no one is. Like, throwing around terms, throwing around everything. I totally agree on grading on a bell curve here. Right. And also, and I do agree with, judging a film on its own merits, in its of itself. And I'll pick that up before we leave.
Just throwing trash on the floor.
I shouldn't be able to play with things.
The nice people in this blank establishment, let us use this room. And
But even the films that, in the last podcast, which we liked, were still called a masterpiece. And again, that seems hyperbolic. Like, in a moment, I think it's very difficult to tell what is a masterpiece and what is not. So again, that terminology, you can judge something 5 out of 5 or whatever, who cares? Right. But judging if it's a masterpiece, like something that's going to stand the test of time, like, even just putting Anatomy of a Fall as the example. Yeah. We won't know that, right? I mean, it doesn't really seem like that. That just seems like, it's okay to be excited about a film, but let's temper ourselves.
No. Right. It is perfectly, yes, you should be excited about films. You should say, I like this, and here's why I like this. What I read, perfection, stone cold genius, masterpiece. These are in quotes and in print. I mean, this isn't just me like hearing people on the street, right? Or like other Fincher or these Fincher bros on like Twitter or whatever it's called now, threads, talking about this. But I mean, this is stuff that's been in print, and I don't get it. Now, I also think that like part of our jobs on this podcast, and I mean this, is to be in a way iconoclastic at times, right? Is to say, you know what? No, I'm going to fucking melt down your golden calf right now, right? I'm going to call out bullshit when I see it. And I do mean that with sincerity. I do want to sort of take on that kind of iconoclast mantle. And I think especially with this like new Fincher film, I don't fucking get it.
I find music a useful distraction. A focus tool. Keeps the inner voice from wandering. This is what it takes. My process is purely logistical. If I'm effective, it's because of one simple fact. I don't give a
For what it's worth, I would never have involved your female friend.
forbid empathy.
Please.
Trust no one. Fight only the battle you're paid to fight. Breathe. Breathe. Calm.
Prepare to be excited.
This is what it takes. If you want to succeed. Hey.
Can we start at the price tag and then we'll go from there?
Yeah.
175 million. I don't see it. I don't
Literally,
yeah,
there were
right.
things you didn't see.
Right. I'm gonna shoot the fight scene in the dark, which, okay, but back to my point of 175 million dollars, and to the point of Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon costing
like
200 million,
yeah.
right? There's got to be money laundering going on here. Otherwise, I don't know how you explain it. Or Netflix and Apple essentially gives everyone a bonus for every movie that they make, and it's $50, and that just adds up over time. So we're all, every Netflix employee is getting a stipend of $1,000, and they're listed as
Assistant producers.
Right, assistant producers.
What was the line from State and Maine?
Yeah.
I'll give you an assistant producer credit. Oh, okay.
Because it is inexplicable unless you bought a separate plane for every time that Fassbender changed locations. I still don't see 170. We didn't see $200 million on the screen for Killers of the Flower Moon. Now, granted, that's a 3.5 hour movie.
And 30 million of it was for Leo.
Sure,
so.
right. But
still,
there's not $175 million on the screen, and it's so I don't get that, and I don't even know why you would tout that or let that leak or tell anybody that this is how much it costs. You're so secretive about how many people watch it and how it does X in different venues.
But here's our budget.
But here's how much we spent. And it just speaks to how much money that Netflix actually has and how much money they can throw around. And here's the problem, and we've talked about this before, but Netflix does not give a shit. Apple does not give a shit. Amazon does not give a shit if any of this is good. This is enough to keep you here for a month, or to keep you here for a few weeks and then give you a reason to resubscribe. And that's basically it. And so I don't necessarily believe in this tenet of where you have to struggle, or every piece of art necessarily has to be a struggle. But I do think there needs to be some stake involved in this. And again, I don't necessarily think that the defining factor of good art is box office dollars.
No.
But if you're just given a big Scrooge McDuck pile of cash and you can go off and make whatever movie you want to make, you're making Adam Sandler films.
Right.
You're making films where I can bring my friends around. And look, there will be people that love those films, but it wouldn't love. There are people that watch those films and giggle, and then that's really about, and then they'll forget about them. But that's fine if that's what Adam Sandler has no pretense of making art, right? He knows and is basically upfront with what he's doing.
Yeah,
And if you giggle at his pee-pee jokes, all the better. And if you don't, oh well, there'll be another movie coming along, and he'll do a prestige film to kind of, put you in your place for a second, and then he'll go back to Grown Up 16, right? It doesn't really fucking matter to him. For someone like Fincher or Scorsese, I think the stakes are I think it's exactly the same. I think they don't give a shit at this point. They are finally given free reign, end cut. They don't have to come to a studio head and for notes, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't matter how long it is. It doesn't matter how tight it is. It doesn't matter how good it is. It's just got to be. And for Netflix and Apple, they can hang their hats on. I got Fincher. I got Scorsese. And I've got them in my stable now. I can get them to make, I can sign them up for $100 million to do 5, whatever, or $1 billion to do 5 films or 10 films or whatever. And they're going to make content for me. And yeah, we'll push it out to the theater for a month because that's what we've got to do to make sure it gets to be eligible for Oscar. But if it wins an Oscar, if it doesn't, who really gives a shit? And if it makes $1 or if it makes $2 at the box office, who really gives a shit? And that's where we're at right now, is that we have turned what were once preeminent directors of American filmmaking into people that just make fucking content. And the problem is that it's no better than, like, there's no stakes to it because they've already established themselves. So they're going to be people that tune in to go in and see the next. But here's where you're going to turn into. Eventually, Scorsese's on his way out. Mm-hmm. Scorsese's 80. You give him a couple more movies, that's basically it for him. But Fincher turns into Neil LaBute. He turns into a guy you don't fucking give. Oh, that's a Fincher film?
like we just did with Neil LaBute.
Right. Oh, shit. Was that something that David Fincher made? One of the guys who was the most visually impressive and, like, at least inventive filmmakers of the 90s and early 2000s. And now we're doing stuff with CGI and camera movement and things. Like, regardless of your mileage may vary, right, on how much you actually give a shit about that. But at least he was trying to do things that were interesting to look at. Here, like from the jump, it's the fucking credits are the ugliest thing I've ever fucking seen.
Which is weird for a Fincher film because the credits are really typically really interesting,
right?
And I mean, not just visually interesting, but then also like kind of contextually and stylistically as well. But yeah, this was just.
There's nothing about this film that I understand. I don't understand the praise for it. Right. I don't understand why it exists. Like, if you're comparing it to La Samurai, then fuck off. Like, I mean, seriously.
Well, I compared it in a negative way. Right? I mean, I told you, like, it so badly wants to be that, but it's not even.
Well, it doesn't understand what that film is
exactly.
At all.
Right. Right. That's what I mean. Like, whoa.
I mean, this movie is about a bad hitman who has a bad hit.
Yeah.
And then they go and try to take care of, they basically try to kill him, to kill him because he did a bad hit. And then he goes from place to place.
Taking revenge. And it's so boring and rote. Well, we've seen this story how many times?
Well, and again, I know it sounds weird especially for me to say this, but like in an age where we've got like Liam Neeson and Keanu Reeves.
Sure.
And like these types of kind of revenge flicks that, at least, when they jump into the zeitgeist, whether you like them or not, right? I mean, there's at least a visual flair.
Yeah.
And for this to exist in the manner in which it does, there's just no reason to sit and waste your time with this movie.
No.
Like even Tilda Swinton, who has probably the best, like, I will say this about the movie, because by the time it lulled me to sleep about halfway through, then I didn't really give a shit. So I was I was less critical of it, but I was less critical of the, and I can't believe Andrew Kevin Walker wrote the dialogue.
This is everybody that Fincher's worked. I mean, this is like the band is like together.
It's
everybody.
Thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's we got 175 million. Let's go fuck
same
around.
DP, same Andrew Kevin Walker,
and then so we get dialogue like, I think Popeye said it best when he said, "I am what I am." I'm like, are you fucking serious? Like, that's not tongue in cheek. That's a straight read of that line. And then we get this dialogue that's repeated, like he's somewhat on the spectrum, that's repeated over and over again. Fassbender
His mantra.
completely sleepwalks through this movie.
Yeah.
Like he's complete. Why have Fassbender in this?
I like Fassbender.
I do too. But he's terrible in this.
But this could have been anybody.
This could have been anybody.
And even if that is Fincher's point, so I mean, but because like
Right.
I have been trying to figure out, okay, like what's he trying to say here? Is this like a meta commentary on his own sort of process as a filmmaker and how like, well, actually I take more of a workman kind of Kubrickian sort of approach to this work, and this is how it is to be tedious and blah, blah, blah. It just doesn't. I just feel like I'm like working myself into knots to try and make it make sense.
Right. This is not Bresson. Right. This is not. This is not anything that's heady or even interesting. I don't. Well, because that's never been Fincher's forte anyway.
No.
He is a music video director.
Right.
Like and look, I like Seven. I like most of his films.
I do too. I do too.
So I'm not going to try to like sit here and tear him. Hell, I even like Panic Room. Like it's not.
I like Panic Room. Don't denigrate Panic Room. I like Panic Room. Right?
It's young taste.
I like the game. I like.
Right.
Come on, the game is fun.
The game was. The
game presupposed that Succession show that's on now, right?
I think the problem for me with the game is that it came on the heels of Michael Douglas being in everything and being in every like psychosexual thriller.
Yeah. And he just plays that same sleazy guy every film.
And so like to kind of, and I don't know, it's weird. I don't dislike Michael Douglas. It was just like, by the time he had done Disclosure, you know, it's just, you're just like, okay, all right.
Did he peak at Romancing the Stone?
Like I'm trying to think.
That's like the apex Michael Douglas like role for me.
It's his most like Kurt Russell kind of role, right?
Yeah. It's his like Big Trouble Little China.
Yeah. That was I love those movies. It's probably so. Yeah. I mean, like after a while, because afterwards, then he goes into like Black Rain.
I was going to say, Black Rain was after that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he goes into a weird kind of, and then he hits again with Basic. I mean, like he's always been on the periphery of like producing. I mean, you know, things like that. Right. He's been in the industry forever, but like, so I don't
San
know.
Francisco.
Like the game was almost too clever by a point. Like the game feeds into like the cleverness of Fight Club, and I do think the headiness of Fight Club and what Fincher was able to do with that story. But I also think it's easy for a white man in the mid '90s or the late '90s to tell a fucking angry white man, like, and also kind of tell that story, and also punch straight across to it and just say fuck you. This is all ridiculous. You know, this is all it's all nonsense what we're doing here, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, this is not that though. I mean, like, I don't. What were the chapter breaks? Like, why
did we even have those?
Right.
I mean, here's the bigger thing to me is like I know every beat in this film.
Yeah.
As soon as it turned into a revenge movie, you knew exactly what was going to happen. There's no real danger for this guy. You know, okay, he's going to come up against this guy. Oh, it's going to be tough, and this will be the one thing.
No, it's not. I mean, like, it's not. There's nothing like. There are like to the movie itself. There are no stakes within the movie because if he dies, he has some girlfriend that you meet for 5 minutes.
What? But this guy would not have a girlfriend.
No.
The guy we first meet who's like, don't trust anyone.
Right.
Have no empathy. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, but they hurt my girlfriend. You're like, what the fuck do you have a girl? And like, does this guy think that no one would notice his like giant mansion in the Dominican Republic? That's his hideaway? I mean, it's...
It really is. Like, it's... Fincher should have known better. Because like I said, like when you're in a day and age of John Wicks and Nobody and Taken, where these just average Joes are doing this, those are parodies of the movies that came before. Like we're past the point where we can do a straight up Bresson French New Wave hitman movie and play it straight.
Right.
And also maybe you could do it if you did it really well. In this case, like, it's so dumbed down. Like, at no point in young Fincher's career would you ever have "I am what I am."
No,
you wouldn't. That would be something that, like,
no, because
that's a parody line.
Yeah,
that is a Leslie Nielsen line. I mean, seriously, if you heard it on
Naked
Police
Gun?
Squad, yeah, you'd be like, oh, well, that's fucking funny. This, I mean, like, I expected that should have been a laugh, right? But,
Right.
but this movie
Right.
has none.
Well, and it doesn't
Intend to.
and it's not playing for irony. That's the thing, right? So
Right.
if it
Right.
were, then great, but it's not. But it's not playing for irony, like at all.
And this doesn't even do I mean, Fincher doesn't shy away from shock. This doesn't even do that.
No, I know.
There's not even like hyper violence in this where, I mean, the people that he kills are all pretty much straight up basic kills. I mean, so there's no like visceral like enjoyment there
Right.
either.
right.
And there's no tete-a-tete. Like the only time you get that is with Tilda Swinton.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then the Tilda Swinton, but she's so resolved to the eventual outcome of it
Mhm.
all. It's, you know, that deliciousness that you need where you have. So at this point, if you have Fassbender and you've got Swinton, then you've got 175 million. Every fucking person he kills should be somebody. He should have
Yeah.
been fighting The Rock.
Right.
He should have been, you know,
right.
he should have gone up against fucking Morgan Freeman in the
Yeah.
first, like
Yeah.
all these people.
That should have been the lawyer, right?
Right.
Yeah.
All of these people, you could have got them in for $5 million and made this movie at least. Holy shit! Can you believe the next
Yeah.
scene is this
Yeah.
guy?
Yeah. And to see that kind of back and forth and see both people sort of chewing up the scene.
Right.
We get a bunch of like, oh, it's that guy from that thing. I've seen him before.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I mean,
And you're and again, I understand that some people are like, you know, talking about the nuance of like he thinks he's this great hitman, but most likely he's not because he kind of fucks up at every single point, you know, during his revenge cycle. Like he gets himself in the bad fight situation. He kills the lawyer too early, you know, and doesn't get the information from him. It's
Okay.
all just like,
but it's not, I mean, if that's meant to be
Also-
like something, it's just not enough.
right.
Also,
I'm sorry. I stepped on a point.
that's okay. That's all right.
No, because my point is dumb. But like, can we get past the fucking trope of like we can turn somebody's head real far and snap their necks?
I know.
Like,
I know.
like
But that's right.
I understand it's a movie thing, but again, if we've got prestige directors,
Right.
why are they falling into these like hammy, just like B movie bullshit?
Yeah.
I don't. And I kind of on the last episode I was like, if you like Colors of the Flower Moon, fuck you. Like, okay, maybe that was gone too far. I don't understand. Like I said, I think people have been lulled to sleep.
Yes. Yes.
And I think
yes.
I think that as an audience, and I don't know how to do this, but as an audience, I guess like you said, it doesn't really matter to Netflix. We can't demand more from these movies.
Right.
The only thing you can do is stop watching them.
Yeah.
But when you have Netflix and it is your cable at this point, yeah, of course you're going to put it on.
Yeah. This, I mean, I said something to you off mic about like, have we sort of lost or forgotten how to be critical, like when watching these films, especially when we're watching films by kind of established, like, you know, well-known names. And I want to go back to this idea you said about if we're all special, like nobody's special. But I think that this is going to sound cheesy and weird, whatever. I mean, I think we all are. It's okay that everyone is special. But that doesn't mean that everything's a fucking masterpiece, right? Not all art. I mean, look, bad art is still art. Okay, I'm going to say that. Bad art is still art. I mean, Fincher has nothing to prove to. He doesn't owe us anything. It doesn't matter if we like this stuff. It matters if he likes it. But I have a hard time believing that he didn't just phone this in, right?
Right.
But where was I going with this? I don't know. I mean, like, bad art is still art, and it doesn't have to be the spectacular thing, but there needs to be something there, some kind of passion there, and there just isn't in this. I'm so tired of people working themselves into these mental knots to make this a good film, right? What's the fucking point of this movie? And if it's about, like, as some people have said, oh, this is clearly a commentary on like neoliberalism and like late stage capitalism. Okay, fine. Like, look, I get the WeWork stuff and the Airbnb stuff, the McDonald's stuff, and like, and Amazon and Starbucks. Okay, I get it, but what the fuck does he do with it? He doesn't do anything with it until the very end, where he chooses not to kill the billionaire because he understands that billionaires can buy justice, right? Or can buy like whatever. Okay, that's maybe something, but Jesus, there's nothing else there. And even if like we take his disguises as like couriers and we look at this from a like oh, why is he dressing up as like service industry people all the time? Is that how he sees himself in his work? He's super rich, so that doesn't hold water for me, right? This Hitman is like, so is David Fincher saying that we should pay custodial staff like more as much as CEOs? Okay, because that's interesting if you are, but you're not saying that.
Right.
Like, you don't mean that. And here's something else. I'm sorry. More people that are praising this or saying this is a good film, are people that also look at things like From the French New Wave, like would look at Les Samurai and be like, well, that's boring, right? Or 400 Blows is boring. And I'm just like, do you not understand anything about?
Well, yeah,
Sorry.
You don't understand.
Like,
and again, I know it sounds pretentious, but you don't understand film. Like it's fine,
Right.
and it's fine. It is fine. It is fine, and I will defend your right to like McDonald's, to like Adam Sandler movies. If you like fucking Jack and Jill, own that shit. Like Jack and Jill.
Right.
But don't come at other shit because you don't fucking understand it. And it's okay to say that shit's boring, but also say it's just not for. I mean, like also it's just not for me.
Right. Right. Like the Adam Sandler stuff is not for me.
Like I'm not going to sit on my soapbox and tell you that Tyler Perry movies are all shit. Because they're not for me. They're not written for me, and it's okay that they're not written for me.
Yeah.
It's a different fucking audience, and the Adam Sandler movies aren't written for me. But to compare the two, like, okay, so take this and compare it to something like Mary Harmon's American Psycho. This doesn't have that.
No.
Like, it doesn't.
No.
Like, and if it does, if that was Fincher's intent, it's so poorly executed and poorly realized. And if you think that people are supposed to extract your message by simply showing him take over an abandoned WeWork building, then I mean, fuck you. You got to come.
Right.
You got to meet us a little bit further than that.
Right.
This is not like. Are we supposed to write some sort of meditative essay on the work of Fincher, like how genius he is by doing these little subtle things while wrapping it up in this bland piece of shit movie? Right.
Exactly. I was gonna say that's it. Right. You don't have to look. You can make a meta commentary type film, but you can't. Look, it's not that I'm able to say what you can and can't do, right? But using that kind of critical like lens of it, you're doing a disservice to the audience by putting this like bland movie out there, by putting this like rehashed, retread, tired ass trope on the screen and expecting me to go, oh, clearly this is A, right? When what you're showing me is B, right? I see that. I mean, this is like an exercise in fucking hermeneutics. Right.
Right.
And if that's what you think.
Right. And we're going to lead into two films that do that perfectly. that are wonderful encapsulations of that, right? Of turning the head on a fucking trope like this.
Yes.
And making it something different.
Yes.
While showing you somewhat of a pedantic kind of existence.
Yes. The oddness of ordinary life.
Right.
Yes.
And this, like I said, I think that where we've gotten is that Fincher has grabbed the brass ring, and there's no recourse for him. There's no one reining in. Like I said, if you've got $175 million budget, what that means to me is that you had no oversight on the budget whatsoever. You just said, I mean, you were just basically signing checks. Yeah. Oh, you guys want lobster every single day?
I was going to say, there's no accounting being done here.
Right. No. Netflix said run it up. So
what did you use this camera for? Personal use.
Right.
Because you didn't use it here, right? No.
Right, yeah.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
Well, and what sucks is that even the and I can't remember much of Mank, to be quite honest, but like even the stuff that is supposedly good gets lost in the shuffle, right? Mm-hmm. You and I think this is an interesting point because I'm saying it out loud. Fuck me. I think this is going to be interesting to look back on. And historically speaking, we look at these filmographies, and the next, when the Why Does the Wilhelm Scream Babies podcast gets made.
That's right. Yeah. The next generation.
When they look back at Fincher's filmography, they look back at Scorsese's filmography, or these filmmakers that are. Like even Baumbach, for example. Yeah. I mean, look, and then like to this point, and this is the reason that I think I'm so upset about someone like what's her face doing
Sarah Polley?
No, Polley
Or
doing
Gerwig?
Bambi, or Gerwig doing Chronicles of Narnia for Netflix. What's the point?
Yeah.
Again,
Right.
they're gonna get $200 million. It doesn't matter if it's good or not. What's the point?
Yeah.
Like, and so like if I'm going to look back on filmmakers, especially those filmmakers who only have a small a small set of films as it stands today anyway, then they're going to go directly into these, big IP, big budget bullshit films that have no stakes. I don't know if people are going to go back and remember that this is a Fincher film.
Right.
Oh shit, he did those 2 things or these 5 things for Netflix at the last part of his career. And then again, what's the point of him coming back and making anything smaller or personal or actually that means something to him? Because at this point, it seems like you can't tell me that this film meant anything to Fincher.
No.
And that, so, and again, not that everything has, I know people take jobs, but Fincher doesn't need jobs.
He doesn't need, or this job.
Right.
Right.
And so having,
I do wonder, like, will his next film be as meaningful to him as Alien 3?
I don't know. I don't know. At that point, though, like, why not? And again, I don't know. I know they don't own the property, but if you're going to spend $175 million and you're just making content, why doesn't Netflix go to Paramount or Columbia or who the fuck ever owns Alien and say, hey, you know what? We're going to remake Alien 3 and we're going to let Fincher do it. We're going to let him do it with the way that he wanted to do it in the first place.
Release the Finchy cut.
Right. Right. And to that end, yeah, $175 million would allow you to buy that film, and like you could split the profits, right? Because Netflix doesn't care about the end state of it. They just want to, like, if you were to tell Alien fans that you were going to Zack Snyder, the Justice League, this thing, spend $100 million, de-age Sigourney Weaver, shoot the scenes that he wanted to reshoot or whatever.
Yeah, people
would line up for that.
Oh yeah,
people would subscribe to Netflix for that.
Yeah.
I'd get your $175 million back. But no, we're set with this. Look, the best thing about this movie is the fucking poster. Yeah. That's basically it.
You are not your xenomorph.
and people will watch it and people will forget it. And this will be one of those, oh shit, I forgot that Fincher did that thing. And no one will ever go back and watch this again. Because it is a fucking boring.
Oh man, I tried to watch it again. I tried to watch it before coming in here and doing this. And I'm like, what, let me fire this back up. Let me take another look. Let me just make sure. I couldn't get past that first, 5-10 minutes. I'm like, oh my God, I do not care.
It's, again, talking about a movie does not look good.
No, and that's so weird to me.
Right?
And here's the thing about that fight scene that you talk about, right? Finch or Fassbender has a hand-to-hand sort of combat with this big sort of, what do they call him, the Brute or something in the film.
And maybe he does because you can't see it.
Well, that's the thing, but it's not like those Nolan Batman fight scenes where everything's up close and a flurry. Right. It's like framed in a way where you can see
like a wig scene.
Everything. Yeah.
Right.
And I'm like, why does this look like shit? I'm like, watching it, I'm just like, it's weird to me.
Why didn't you light it? Like, why have it in there if you're not going to light it?
Right.
You lit him giving the dogs tranquilizers.
I know. Yeah.
Right.
Which also, you know what? I saw that move in
Fletch.
In Fletch, but also in Nobody's Fool with Paul Newman.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And as soon as you saw a dog, you knew what the fuck he was going to do.
Right.
So dumb.
All of it.
Everything. Every fucking beat in this film, you're just like, oh, okay. Oh my God.
By the time it was done, I was glad it was done, and I was just like, okay, cool. I don't ever have to turn this back on again.
I'm so sad.
Movies suck sometimes. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, exactly.
Can we talk real quick before we jump into jump into Hal double H over here?
H squared.
So I finalized my because I know the listeners at home are dying to hear about this.
Our Veronica Mars corner.
So I finished watching the movie, and look, it was every bit a Kickstarter movie that it possibly could have been. But here's the thing: I will say that I am somewhat appreciative of watching season 4 and then going back to the movie.
Okay.
Because the movie clearly, obviously, it's set 10 years after the events of Veronica Mars. She's well, not 10 years because she's going back to her 10-year high school reunion. So there's some time past.
Veronica Mars college years.
But it felt more like the Veronica Mars TV show than season 4 did. So it was very much a let's get all the kids back together, and then we're gonna make them do, again, like Steve Guttenberg's daughter is part of the killer clan. You got to keep Dick Casablancas because he's still a funny character, and also he's a Rob Thomas friend.
Right.
So he doesn't. He's exempt from being anything other than just being kind of a pretty blonde dummy. And then there aren't that many, like, all the cameos are people from the first 3 seasons of the show. So but you get like fucking Jamie Lee Curtis. There's got to be a ton of marshmallows out there, man, that are like signing up for this shit. Because like Jamie Lee Curtis is in a throwaway role. I mean, like, and there were other cameos. Now that I'm not pulling them, but there were other people that were like big enough to come in and play these little. One thing that I have, if I have a nit to pick with. I'm gonna say Kristen Stewart, Kristen Bell, her inclusion of Dax Shepard in a lot of her projects, and I don't know if it goes. I think maybe it goes the other way because I think she was in Chips or whatever. Although he doesn't have that many projects, really.
They've got like Carvana commercials or something.
They do have Carvana commercials now, and usually he plays a kind of a hyper douchebag version of himself, which is assuming I'm not too far from the truth of how he actually is.
Yeah, a version of Dax Shepard.
But it's a little like it takes you out of the moment. But it was a nice way to go back and finalize the series. And again, it was such an easy like wrap up of like, oh, we're gonna solve one more mystery, and then we're gonna kind of send her and get her and Logan to act together and piss or pish or whatever. I can't remember piss or I know it sounds like piss, and I don't know but I know it's not how you pronounce it. Her and that boyfriend are gone.
Right.
The college boyfriend. So she gets back with Logan, and Logan's not quite as cut as he is in season 4.
Right.
But he's getting there.
Because he's now in the Navy.
Right.
And so this was the thing, like when he picks her up at the airport, he's in his dress whites.
Yes, yeah.
And those things do not fit.
No.
They are big and baggy. And I'm like,
it's kind of a David Byrne kind of look for
that's not, it really is. I'm watching that going, I don't think that's how those are supposed to fit. I've seen Richard Gere in these things. That was weird.
But it was nice to wrap it up. But I think the one thing that we forgot to mention is the surprising addition to the writing staff and the production staff of season 4, which was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, which is such like I needed to be warned. I needed to I didn't because it was one of those things when I saw it pop up. I'm like, that can't fucking be right. That can't be Kareem Abdul. That's he's spelling it differently. But no, I read some I guess he has written, he's a fiction writer. He's got a writing partner, and they've pitched movies and
I would say he's done a bunch of production stuff.
Yeah, and then I guess he had a tie to Rob Thomas somehow, and then kind of came in and helped them write a couple of episodes but I like to in my head now I like to think that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was the person who turned up the sexiness of Veronica Mars. He came in and was like, look, what you need to do is
know what we need.
She needs to have a lot of fantasies about those hot dudes that she was hanging out with, and we're gonna need to have her say almost the F word, but not quite. But yeah, we need her to be kind of on the cusp of.
She needs to be a little more edgy, right? A little hotter.
But yeah, Kareem.
That's true.
I like it. So I like that there's an audience out there that only knows Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as a writer and it's funny to me because they were talking to him, and it was all of they were doing an interview about how he got into it and why he was doing it. And everything he talked about was tied back to the Lakers. It's I've been on a team before, but usually I'm used to reading the team. And this was exciting as being on primetime Lakers. And I'm fucking, oh man.
He's a really smart dude too. I mean, he's a really, really, he hasn't won an Oscar, right? I know Kobe. No, I know Kobe did.
Right.
And that's why I was, I couldn't remember exactly what all he has produced, or if it's mostly a kind of in shorter form and TV stuff, right?
Yeah. That was it. So now we can put Veronica Mars to bed, and I'll binge something else that's teen worthy, I guess.
It's weird, right? Like, because I do the same thing, and maybe this is too much
Like,
behind the curtain stuff, but I will end up watching like those teen dramas.
I'm tempted
as well,
to go back to
and
My So-Called Life and pick that up and see if that holds up.
I tried not too long ago, probably a couple years ago. There was like a Dawson's Creek marathon, right? It was one of the like Labor Day or something,
right?
And man, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna rewatch. I'm gonna just sit here. I don't have anything to do today. At this point, I think I was still on my own. And so, like, just, hanging out by myself. And I'm like, I'm just going to watch Dawson's Creek. I made it through half the first episode. And I'm like, okay, maybe 14-year-old me thought this was smart, but oh my God, this is fucking awful. Like, the writing was so bad.
That Kevin Williamson stuff that was just like where they not reined in, and it was all that kind of like it was post
Scream,
right?
Post Scream, so everything was that hyper sort of postmodern kind of thing. And I'm just like, nope,
just pop culture references.
Boy, I tried, and I just could not do it. Could not do it. But yeah, My So-Called Life is one I want to go back.
My So-Called Life is one I genuinely enjoyed. I was thinking also of Party of Five, but I don't think I could handle that one at this point. And like, there's what's that basketball drama, One Tree Hill? Like that happened. That was later on, but I happened to catch that.
No. I really liked. This was only on one season as well, just like My So-Called Life, but the series Relativity. With
I don't think I ever watched that.
Adam Goldberg and the girl from Father of the Bride.
Oh yeah, like her.
And
she married Pete Sampras.
Oh, good for her.
Or did she? I think she dated Pete Sampras. I think
either way, good for her.
I think no, yeah. So Bridget Wilson ended up marrying Pete Sampras, but she did Kimberly something. I want to say Williams. It sounds wrong, but maybe it's right. Yeah, she was in Indian Summer.
Sounds so wrong. Yeah, Kimberly Williams. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And wait, I want to find out who the lead actor was. David Conrad.
No,
I don't know. But Jane Addams was in this was in this show. Nice. Lisa Edelstein, who I really like.
Yeah.
Again, Adam Goldberg, Richard Schiff. That's right. But yeah, only a season. It was very much. It was on ABC too. Like after they canceled My So-Called Life, then they put this on. They're like, oh, this ain't gonna work either. But I really enjoyed that too, and I've never been able to find it again. Okay. Anything else you want to say about like TV and about how excited you are about like? But Moonlighting is finally streaming, and
I haven't dived.
I watched the first episode.
Did you?
Bruce Willis is so funny.
Yeah,
he's so great. All right, let's fucking talk about Hal Hartley.
Let's talk Hal Hartley.
Okay, I want to say, how many people came from these first few films? I mean, Martin Donovan, Adrienne Shelley, Edie Falco. Look, there would be no Nurse Jackie if not for Hal Hartley. Okay, I'm gonna say that, right? Did you watch these first films like right away? Because these would be
VHS stuff for me.
Okay,
so like this was a time. Like,
I was 11 years old and went to the theater to see Unbelievable Truth.
Yeah, no, I would have been. So Unbelievable Truth. No, I didn't watch it until I got. Like Trust was the entry point for me.
Okay.
And that was in VHS so like this starts to hit, right? Like he really was at the forefront of that movement of that American
indie sort of like 90s movement.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean like we don't speak about him and I guess in the same hushed tones as you talk about Spike Lee or Kevin Smith or Linklater or
that was like a question that I had like too. It was like, why isn't he bigger? Because you got Kevin Smith, you got Linklater. I mean, you even have people like who are sort of distinct in their own way, like Baumbach and like Wes Anderson and like Yorgos Lanthimos too.
Right. I think he had integrity, and that ended up hurting him. Like, there's a story about The Unbelievable Truth, and Miramax is the one who distributes that. But Harvey Weinstein went to him and was like, "I want sex in this. I want." Adrian to be naked. I want nudity. I want an explicit sex scene. And he was like, here's your check back.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. And they still distributed his movie, but they didn't distribute Trust. And like, so I think
Fine Line did.
I think this idea of him, standing up for himself, standing up for his work and knowing what it was and what it wasn't, that would have completely ruined this movie.
Mhm.
I mean, they make a
Mhm.
point of not showing her, and they speak about her being nude and being a model, and
Yeah.
and so to actually then take away from that, and there's such a nuance that and again, fuck Harvey Weinstein.
Oh, well, of course, yes,
I mean,
yes.
and also he was like the Blockbuster of independent film.
Yeah.
Like he would just buy shit up, chop it up, tear it up, and redistribute it for
Yeah.
how he and notorious for doing that for foreign films and then just repackaging them when no one wanted him to do that, basically. And it made him insanely wealthy. So good on him, I guess.
Yeah.
And then now he's in prison. So fuck him. But but I think that's really the reason is that Hartley never really had the. I think he did do a lot of Cassavetes-esque
I was just
sabotaging of his own career. So I will say that there was a little bit of that Cassavetes-esque.
I was gonna ask if he was like his generation's Cassavetes.
I wrote down that he's not, but he definitely has. I think he's not, to me, the filmmaker that Cassavetes was. But I do think that you don't have Ed Burns, you don't have Noah Baumbach, you definitely don't have Kevin Smith if Hal Hartley leads the way of creating these kind of talky, quirky, you look at something like Unbelievable Truth and then look at Clerks and see how and again, I don't want to be the guy who's sitting or shooting on Kevin Smith, but how clumsy and how awkward Clerks comes off, but with trying to do the same thing. Hartley putting in musical cues works way more, is much more efficient and gets to the point than Smith putting in little tinkly xylophone stuff when he's trying to make a joke. The title cards, it's the somewhat stilted soap operatic dialogue they uses, that Kevin Smith wants to do. And again, I like Clerks. I'm not gonna sit here and badmouth Clerks, but go and watch Unbelievable Truth. If you want to see something that was a few years earlier, really about 5 years earlier, and kind of led the way for and paved the way for these films to be made, and everyone who came after him was able to do so because Hartley showed that it was possible.
Yeah. So Hartley went to SUNY Purchase for film school. Had initially studied art and painting, I think elsewhere. But something interesting about his time at Purchase was that he said that the department there, the film department there, was adamant that they not be specialists, that they learn every job that's there on a movie set. And so this, led to a lot of collaboration. I think lifelong kind of partnerships with other people, knowing how to, film this or light this, right? So these guys working with each other back and forth on films, which I thought was really interesting about how he knows how to do all this stuff.
Right.
He also said that before he makes a film, he sits down and watches Full Metal Jacket because he's like, that's just the perfect, for him, that is the perfect movie. In it, I think, how did he say it? I'm not sure, but almost realigns what he's trying to do, in his head, right before he goes and starts shooting a film. But I thought that was interesting that that's the film he chooses. He's like, nope, that's it. That does everything that I want to do. So I'm going to watch that. Something that I find really interesting is how he is so concerned or cares so much about sort of the rhythm of a film. And I mean, not just establishing the language of a film or the grammar of the film, but the composition of each frame. How these films are sort of filled with a kind of wonder, right, for this world, or maybe rather the people within the world he's creating, and how they find or maintain this moral center in this world that does not care one bit, right? These worlds, the world we live in, is one that's full of continuous moral compromise. So how do we deal with that hypocrisy over and over?
Right. No, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I think that something that stands out to me about his characters, especially in the world that, like you said, in the world that they inhabit, is that all of his main characters are who they say they are.
Yeah.
They're not dishonest. They're not manipulative. They're and I think it comes from this kind of Long Island ethos that he kind of this East Coast, like lower middle class, like
blue collar working kind of class.
Right.
But yeah.
But they're not out to one up someone. They're not scheming or conniving. They just want to live with their own ideals, and they and there's just this kind of earnestness. It does harken back to films like, in the Ernest Lubetz and like these films that are like in the 50s and 40s, these characters that just, were wide-eyed, but they're hardened by the world, but they're also they still don't allow that to affect them, and especially their pursuits. And I think that's what's so much fun about these movies, is that these movies can come off as simplistic and like, and almost kind of like I said, they do have kind of a soap opera like feel to them, like a sound to them. The plots aren't like necessarily overly complicated. They're working class people who found themselves in situations that may be beyond their control, type of thing. And it's funny watching these two back to back and kind of like how they exist. I can see why. I mean, I can understand, like, and I know when he talks about trust, he was talking about like it really wasn't meant specifically to be written about Long Island, or and to be set in, like, it was kind of an every place type of thing.
Right.
But this set of characters that he has for these first movies, and of course as we get to Simple Men and you get to Donovan and Bert together, it makes sense that these kind of like you're watching a TV series of these people that are kind of interacting with one another, and they're kind of weaving in and out of their lives.
Yeah. So you mentioned Kevin Smith, and then some of the other stuff we just talked about comes to play here. But where Kevin Smith is so heavily invested and cares so much about like pop culture, there is none of that here.
Right. These are timeless.
And so, everything is like, so we talked about this world and these characters. It's all self-contained, right? And these characters, they don't care about this other stuff. They care about sort of like what's right here, right? What concerns them, what concerns the people they're concerned about. None of this other stuff. And even the settings or the scenes are so like sparse, right? They're so blank. There is like nothing there. They're almost like on the verge of being empty. And I think that again, like leads to that quality of like, yeah, this is timeless. This is who we say we are. This is where we say we are. And this is what this is about.
Yeah. The only time you really, I mean, obviously in Trust, he works on television sets. So that kind of dates it. I mean, like in How You're Supposed to Know, right? So, so there's some throwaway stuff but outside of that, there's, for the most part, the placement of this it could be right now.
It's him. I'm sure it's him.
It's been a long time.
He raped and killed Pearl's older sister, and then shot her father, and they never found the mother.
He and the girl shot her parents, then they went on the road, and then he shot her too.
She killed herself because her old man wouldn't let her marry Josh Hutton. Then Josh goes after the old man, shoots him. Then he goes back and kills his own father.
If he killed all those people, he'd be in prison for life.
Hi.
Hello.
So what do you do?
I'm a mechanic.
I met a man yesterday. An older man? I think so.
How are you, Pearl?
What do you mean you want to move out?
Someone's offered me an apartment in New York City for 6 months. Did you make love to Josh?
No, did you?
No. Why not? I just got here.
There's something I want to tell you about me.
I don't want to hear it.
It's important.
The unbelievable truth. Bruce Williamson calls it a provocative black comedy full of kinky humor and cheerful surprises.
Seems like a nice man. You think so? I mean, after he's killed your sister and your father, things happen.
So this was filmed in 1989 for $75,000. It's amazing.
I mean, Fincher could have made
how many films?
Right. How many films could Hal Hartley make on $175 million?
He'd be like, oh my God.
Well, it's funny.
How many?
It's funny too, because he talks about how, I read a few interviews with him, but he was talking about how, like, by the time he makes, and I know we're jumping ahead, by the time he makes Ned Rifle, with his Kickstarter, like the most money that he had to spend on Henry Fool was renting the cameras and the dollies and that stuff like that. By the time Ned Rifle comes around, he bought all that stuff for cheaper than he could have for rented it, doing Henry Fool. So like the barrier to entry for him is lower. obviously he still doesn't. I mean, but again, at this point, his fans are a dwindling. I wouldn't say dwindling number, but I mean, like, you start to get distracted, right? So coming back, oh yeah, what the fuck just happened to Hal Hartley?
Right, right.
And it's interesting that the opportunities for him and self-distributing his Blu-rays and things like that are that's an avenue for him at this point. So
doesn't he have something he's working on though?
I think
I forget
so.
the name of it. I thought I wrote this down, or I meant to, but apparently I didn't.
We've got a few episodes to talk about him. So
okay,
I'm sure
good. So we'll come back around to it. So anyway, after serving time for murder, Josh Hutton returns to his hometown where he meets Audrey Hugo. No one can remember exactly what Josh did, but they are all wary of him, especially Audrey's father. We'll leave it there.
Right.
Yeah.
Watching this again, it took me about 20 to 30 minutes to find my rhythm with the film.
Sure.
And I was like, oh, fuck, did we just step into another D-double-G? And I'm like, but once it finds its groove, and from the get-go, Burke and Adrian are so good, and they just pop on the fucking screen.
Yeah.
She's so expressive, and her features are so just, I don't know, her eyes and just her, like, the way her face is sculpted is just like it's just made for the screen.
Right.
And so's Burke for that example.
I know. Well, I mean, I'm going to have this question a lot, but like, why didn't he? I mean, I know that he did plenty. I know he's had a great career, but some of these guys, and like, I'll say this again about Donovan when we come up, like, why weren't these guys even bigger?
With Burke's build and his voice and his look, how
chiseled.
Right.
Cheekbones.
Exactly. Like it seems like he would have been just kind of plucked and I'm trying to think, like, I was trying to think about people who popped out of the 90s indie scene, and there really aren't that I could think of that many. Even guys like, like Donovan, like the Whilt Stedman players, none of those guys. Josh Charles didn't really pop. Like, I mean, they all had workman careers, but like, there are no true bona fide stars that kind of come out of that era. Smith always used his own clan. I mean, like, so maybe you could say like someone like Fishburne, but Fishburne would, preceded that by a good portion.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of someone like, no one from Spike's crew really comes out of like, really out of nowhere. I mean, like Rosie Perez wasn't a huge part. I mean, that was something different though. Like that was, and so like, I think everyone who was in that era were
Sam
still
Jackson. Anyway,
maybe. But I mean, like, but I don't know. By the time that Jungle Fever comes around, like, I don't know. I think Jackson kind of crawled his way to the top. From that perspective. Yeah. But yeah, all of these, like, no one in Baumbach. I mean, really, no one. Even though Anderson would be much later. By the time Anderson, I mean, like Luke and Owen, but they're big, huge stars. But I mean, like, I don't know. I don't know if I equate them to this whole
This is a different
here.
kind of. Yeah.
And even then, Luke and Owen Wilson aren't headlining movies. And they're picked up more for their quirkiness than they are
acting chops.
Right.
I mean,
right. Well, no, yeah. But,
no.
Look, they're comedic actors. They're not. I mean, and they're fine. They work really, really well in the Anderson in that realm. But yeah, these guys, this like Burt should have been a leading man. I can't even think of any like really like Coen brothers. I mean, like, because the Coen brothers, you always use established people anyway.
Right.
So by the time the Coen brothers do Raising Arizona, they're picking out Nicolas Cage and Holly Hunter, and those guys have already been doing things. And like Dan Hedaya. I mean, so Frances McDormand, but again, Frances McDormand didn't break out. I mean, like, really outside of the Coen brothers thing either. So, so yeah, we'll just put that as the point of the as I belabored it to this so
That's
far.
Okay. Look, podcasts are nothing if not thought exercises.
But yeah,
right?
I in a perfect world, there would have been somebody who was able to cash. I mean, like, and again, there's nothing wrong with Burke being on Law and Order SVU as a camp. I mean, he was on the Dennis Leary Rescue Me, right? Yeah.
And he did a number of things like that where he's been kind of in stuff and like never not working. He should have been like this kind of. He's also an actual fireman.
Is he?
Yeah.
I
He's
didn't
like a
know that.
certified like working
So him
fireman.
and Buscemi could.
Yeah,
take care of stuff.
right. I mean, God, the guy's just like, he looks better with age anyway.
He also like, and it kind of speaks to the point that this movie, like, really, as Weinstein buries it, doesn't. Man, all of these fucking films that this movie lays the groundwork for. I know it's not just this one, but like looking at things like Trees Lounge and like there's just a whole, and like the Brothers McMullen and like all these things that kind of like wear this influence, even if they don't know it on their sleeve.
Right.
The fact that this kind of gets stuck in like a Laserdisc VHS back corner, hushed tones is really, really attractive. And I know that we do this a lot on the podcast about filmmakers that didn't get their due, but it's crazy that, and I think I may have overstated Whilt Stedman in my head, or Wyatt Steelman in my head from the last podcast, but he got the Criterion works of all of his films though too. So like like I know that he kind of fell off the radar too after that kind of Last Days of Disco and
right.
And it really, that was kind of the end of his output. But all of those films got Criterion releases, and so there's at least an audience that kind of can go back to those and pick those up. And
This
here,
stuff is hard to
like
find.
Hartley doesn't stream; he produced this Blu-rays all on his own, like via Kickstarter. So, and most of them are sold out at this point. So, it's not easy to pick up all of these films. But yeah, I remember for me going into to Hartley, it was looking in the independent section of your local mom and pop. And seeing those videos, because I mean, like, they were all heralded. I mean, it wasn't like, especially when you get to amateur. I mean, like, by that time, really, people are starting to sit up and take notice.
Would have been a different world if Tarantino hadn't taken Pulp Fiction to Cannes that year, because it was the same year Amateur was there.
Yeah, probably. That was Juggernaut. I mean, like,
that's what I mean. Like,
yeah.
It's kind of a sliding doors moment, maybe, right?
Yeah,
but
who knows?
Yeah, but that's why it's called a sliding doors moment, Jason, because we don't know. That's why we asked the question: what would have happened? Right?
I didn't like that movie, so it's not like it's a
Amateur or Pulp Fiction.
No,
you don't like
Sliding
Pulp
Doors.
Fiction? Why don't you like Pulp Fiction?
We'll get to it when we get to our Tarantino.
Okay. No, I didn't like Sliding Doors either. I mean, God, her accent was the fucking worst, right? But I did, the thing that I will always take away from Sliding Doors is no one expects the Spanish Inquisition.
But this movie plays out like a less surreal, in a sense, Heathers, right? There's
sure.
There are all these distinct characters acting in a very distinct way. I don't know if that's a good way to describe it. But again, this does play like a film, like a tongue-in-cheek Andy Griffith kind of moment. Like all of these characters are so specific in their actions, and the plot devices and the way that things get resolved are so daytime TV. Like but again, in a Twin Peaks kind of way.
Okay, I was going to ask you about this, right? So how much Lynch do you see in this?
Quite a bit.
Do you really?
Yeah,
okay.
I think that kind of, I don't know, that not winking at the camera, but still kind of being knowing of all of this. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it wears it pretty well.
I mean,
it may be too much to say that the weirdness level is really not there.
Okay.
Right? It doesn't quite go towards Lynchian levels.
Right.
But I do like this idea of taking this kind of simplistic approach and painting it with an art house brush that Hartley does here.
Well, and he's really just saying, like, look how weird everyday life is.
Right.
And I think that's where he kind of connects with Lynch. But yeah, I mean, I think Lynch is so much more weird. And I don't think Hartley is interested in being that weird.
I don't think he's interested in the surreal. Right?
Or being like that dark either.
Right.
So if you think about, like Blue Velvet and some of those other films that are still sort of centered in like the everyday world, right? It's not nearly as dark. But it is interested in just the weirdness of what it is to go through everyday life.
Well, take Matt Malloy's character, right? Which is he picks him up. He picks him up as a hitchhiker, and then he sees him in New York as a drunkard, a drunk musician that's not begging, but he has a hat out. It's that type of like oh, aren't you that? No, I'm not that guy. I'm a musician. Those types of stories that we have for ourselves are so like well done. And it's just so funny. Like, it's just,
you can do a double take.
Right.
Wasn't that guy from like the beginning?
And this like,
or why are you dressed all in black? Are you a priest?
right. I think you're a priest. I
think you're a priest.
Right? You don't drink. I'm pretty sure you're a priest.
Oh, last time you drank, you killed somebody? That would drive me to drinking.
But this whole storyline about a drifter who gets released from prison, comes back into the only town that he knows, and everyone there has kind of conflated the story about him to be much bigger than he's now a mass murderer. When it comes down to it, he got into a drunk driving accident
with his girlfriend.
She died, and then he thinks that he kills her father
because they got into an altercation,
right?
And he fell down the stairs. Yeah.
So he was wrongly accused of that crime, and
like everybody just makes up these stories. Well, I don't know. I heard that he killed like these 4 people and these 4 family members. Well, that's not what I heard. I heard this, but it's just this back and forth of, well, that's what I heard, so it must be true.
right.
And they just look at this guy from afar. But they keep their distance, but they don't sort of shun him in any way, which is interesting too.
It's hard to like break this film down like in pieces, but there's just so much to love about it. Like every character has something that's fun. The dad and the back and forth between the dad and Adrian, and like, you're gonna go to college, and you're like, yeah, but I'm gonna do journalism. He's like, no, you're gonna do communications, and like these handoffs that they do with one another, these compromises they do with one another to get to what the end goal. And then, when she becomes the model and becomes jaded, and she's got the poster of the $1 bill on her, on her
the like artsy painting,
right?
Yeah.
And this is a girl who's been concerned with the end of the world the entire, for the first part of the movie, and she's worried about the nuclear holocaust, and like
her counselor says she's apathetic.
Right. And she starts doing these progressive, photo shoots, and then of course they end up with her being naked. And
but in the New York Times Magazine, so she's not doing. But I think that's like,
she's not showing everything, but she's showing enough.
Right, she's showing enough. But it's not like it's in Playboy.
I think she's selling jewelry.
I love that they're gonna have a party because she's showing up in like, the Sunday Times Magazine. It's so great, right?
And they buy it at like a little league field, it was
it's
like a
little
weird
newsstand.
It was so bizarre. It's like
but again, like, it's this world, this community in this like specific kind of world, right? I mean, and so it makes sense at that point that like, yes, like they're all gonna meet here and then go back to the house,
right? And she goes off to New York and is living with some boyfriend or some guy who owns.
He's the manager, right? So he's essentially
the guy who was that took the pictures of her.
Yeah.
Okay. So I missed that thread.
He's the guy at the beginning of the film. He's at the diner and he's telling every like pretty girl that he's a professional photographer and that they should do modeling. Yeah. Yeah. This is my camera. And I'm like, okay, hang on, dude. So he's basically like a manager. He's like a talent scout manager. Photographer, and so he gets her the gigs and stuff like that. She moves in with him because she or I don't know if they told her to leave at home or they got upset or whatever. So
it was because she was spending so much money on the train. They were like, she might as well move to
New York. So she moves in with this guy, but he wants sex and she won't have sex with him. And he's like, everything's a transaction. She's like, well, I'm not choosing to partake in this transaction or whatever. And so
I just love when he starts going, and this is very American Psycho, but like, I love when he starts talking about all the things that he owns, and like, I own 2 Warhols, and like his vase gets broken, and he's like, my vase,
my vase. I love, he's like, I'm not rich, but I'm doing pretty well. You see my car out there? It costs this, and then I've got 2 Warhols, and I mean, he just starts going on. Yeah, it's very much without talking about Huey Lewis in the news.
Right.
Or Studio.
And obviously there's conflicts, and there's a love interest between the ex-prisoner and the
it's
model.
It's like an anti-rom-com.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is like this darkly funny anti-rom-com.
Which if you take then like Weinstein's comment,
yeah,
like did you watch the movie?
No.
This is more of a platonic friendship than it is a sexual relationship, right?
Right.
her father is constantly disgusted that she's actually a woman. Right.
Right. So, okay. So I'm glad you said that because there's something in these first two movies to me where it's almost like Hartley exploring what it is to be a man in certain kinds of relationships, right? And I don't mean like, oh, I'm a big old toxic like man and I'm going to take what I want. But it's like, what are my responsibilities? How should I act? And how do I do that? And how do I say certain things? How do I profess certain things? How do I act? What do I do in these situations? Less so than it is like, how do I get the girl?
Right. Because her boyfriend does that and plays that out over and over again. He doesn't really care about her, but he cares about her as a possession. And in so much as other people looking at her. And so he's always just shoving people.
Getting into fights whenever anybody looks at her. Or he's making out with other girls in front of her. And then
when a guy like side-eyes her.
Then he like leaves that girl and goes, I love at the party where he just like picks a fight. Like, what'd you say? I didn't say anything. I think you did. And then like the whole party just breaks out into a fight. He wakes up the next day. But no, he does sort of fulfill that role, which.
But the dad has the same problem, right? The dad can't stand that she's been having sex with her boyfriend. And then he can't stand that she doesn't want to go to college. But when she does get into Harvard, he wants her to go to community college because he can't afford Harvard. Then he pushes her into modeling, but then he can't stand that when she does become a model because people are looking at her because how it reflects on him. And then he ends up defending her. Like, it's this whole...
Yeah.
It really is an interesting...
And it's a contradiction there of the father. Like, well, I need to, sort of do this for my daughter, but I can't do that. And oh my God, this is driving me crazy. But, I think that it is... in a weird way, maybe a real commentary on how a lot of us are, where we're men and we're supposed to sort of be supportive and be this way. But wait, I get kind of jealous. And right, yes, you can be your own woman and do your own thing. But wait, I want to come too. And like,
right. Don't forget about me.
Yeah, but don't forget about me, right? Like I'm still okay, right? You still love me, right? So I think that is really astute on his part. And then we see, Josh, played by Burke, who just really wants to keep his head down and fix cars and doesn't really want anything else.
He doesn't need much. He says it straight up, I can't pay you very much. I don't need much.
I don't need much. Right. Yeah. Yeah. He just wants to work, just wants to get back to the world. Right.
Yeah. It's interesting that he gets jealous of the photographer boyfriend.
I think at that point, right, she kind of throws herself at him and he's like, no, or you don't really like me or you won't like what I forget how he says it, but he kind of like he doesn't reject her in a mean way, but kind of, pushes her away. And so by the time he goes to get her, I think he has sort of finally decided, right? I'm going to make a choice and make a decision. And I actually want something now. And like when you finally like decide that, yeah, this is really what I want, and it doesn't work out, it's even more heartbreaking, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
And he thinks this thing of himself throughout, and it's just kind of why he's keeping himself emotionally under wraps. And then once he's finally let go, and Pearl tells him that, you didn't actually kill him, and that's why I fainted when I saw you. And like when the unbelievable truth comes out, right? Then he starts to become a little bit more comfortable in the moment, in the situation that he finds himself in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough scene too. I mean, look, as someone who no longer drinks, when he bought the beer, I had a little cold sweats there, right? And then when you saw that he actually drank one. I mean, I know this is a different thing, and he doesn't sort of like do a full kind of like, blackout sort of reproduction of what happened, but you see him sort of like, I guess he kind of has to tear himself down to then kind of be built back up into someone who could actually be with Audrey at that point,
right? And
be okay with just the two of them having nothing and going forward, right?
Right.
Yeah. I love how he calls attention to the oddness of this ordinary life, how he calls attention to like these conventions and tropes and trappings of that like ordinary middle class life. And then like all of this like pseudo philosophizing, right? Which I absolutely love, right? Just like talking nonsense all the time about like, what's the point of all this? About existence, about meaning of life. So this film features all these things that are going to become like his hallmark, right? The deadpan humor, the offbeat, sort of stilted, pause-filled dialogue, again, the philosophical questions about life, the stylized acting, right? That real kind of stylized acting and camera movements. Also, the use of repetition in these two films is fucking brilliant, right? When Edie Falco sits down with him at the diner and she's like, I know what you need. What's that? You need a woman. That girl's crazy. I know, but I like her. And this like conversation that's repeated like 4 times. I was like, did something skip here?
Right.
But it's like, there's subtle changes each time. Well, it's really good.
When he's talking to her about the planetary transmission pieces of it, and the dialogue starts overlapping on itself, where she's kind of like losing, like she's like tries to keep up with the dialogue, but she's like, this is boring the shit out of her. So she's like, all right, whatever.
Whatever. Do you want me to explain to you how an automatic transmission works?
Like his use of title cards, but doing it so sparingly and to the I think it just really, there's just a whimsy to this type of film that really, really works. And then by the time that we end with them looking up and listening to the potential airplanes, and like that, that non-existent but potential threat that it's always over our heads.
Yeah.
I think it's so, this movie is so really, really well done. It's so well put together.
It's great.
And like I said, you can obviously see it was filmed for nothing, but I mean it really is, I don't know. There was this level of film that came out at this time this movie particularly doesn't ever really betray itself with first time filmmaking.
Right.
Like you see it in, again, and I'm gonna harp on a lot of these, but you see it in like Smith's Clerks, where some of the jokes just are ham-fisted and like too on the nose. You see it with Baumbach's stuff as well, like especially like looking at Kicking and Screaming and the Chip character. That's not what his name was, but the dumb one of their group, and he's like, there's just certain like scenes with him that don't really work all that well. There's just certain scenes that and I like that movie. I love that movie, but they're just pieces that it fails itself occasionally throughout. And there's just none of that in this movie. There's just none. This is so well put together, and I think this is why people kind of go back to these and we're like, these are indie darlings that we're going to watch, and praise. But yeah, this all of the beats work.
Oh yeah,
and all of the tricks that he tries to do, and he does, and it really, really work well.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And I think you can see influence. I think you can see his influence in this film too. So European directors, kind of like Godard, I see in this, but also someone like Howard Hawks, the kind of like screwball comedies of that time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think even of like His Girl Friday, the way that these two play together, the way that Burke and Shelley go back and forth, I think is just great. I mean, of course, it's not that fast-paced Grant Russell thing, but it has that same kind of charisma. It has that same kind of charm.
Do you think it almost does it too well to that, where it's to its detriment? Because I think it doesn't really lean quite to that rat-a-tat dialogue, right? It does pare it back a little bit. And it doesn't really lean into like I don't know, it walks the line where if you came into this from a Hallmark or Lifetime movie perspective and weren't really like paying attention, this would play kind of straight, right? This would, like, you wouldn't necessarily be able to pick up those trappings of like the soap operatic acting style. I don't know. Do you think that works against it in some cases?
I think it might, but I think if you came into this film in the middle of it, you'd be like, what the fuck is going on? Right?
Right.
So, sure. But, I mean, because like you said...
my point is that maybe this is the reason why Hartley's stuff doesn't quite stand out as amongst the others, right?
Sure.
Like, all the films that kind of really did jump out, and granted, it's hard to compare it to Tarantino or Spike or even really Linklater, because those were... I don't know, there were bigger budgets and once you get past their initial offerings, right? Once you get past She's Gotta Have It, I know it wasn't his first film. Well, actually, yeah, it was. Or Reservoir Dogs or Slacker. Then by the time that they get to their second or third films, that they're so slick, right? They're so well produced. But I don't know if Hartley's like, I don't know. It's hard. If had it have gone a little harder to make its point. Because we talked about whatever the point of the killer was not, wasn't communicated at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't necessarily know how.
Well,
you
if we
would do
watched
it.
a film about the killer going through like weird everyday life stuff, I might be more interested.
Sure,
I mean, to be
No,
honest, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Look,
well, you saw that with Grosse Point Blank, right? I mean, that was I think that was played as a straight comedy, but that's still the same.
Right. I mean, yeah, a killer having this sort of like not midlife, but like crisis or panic attacks, right? Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, played for popcorn, right? So, I mean, that's more interesting than what we got in The Killer. So yeah, if Hal Hartley did The Killer, I think that would work, right? The slickest Hal Hartley gets is Henry Fool.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and I think maybe he overreaches with a few films.
Sure.
And again, I have not rewatched No Such Thing yet, but
that's
I'm
one
assuming that one was that one's still going to feel like an overreach for me. But yes, maybe it's unfair to ask this of a first film then too, because by the time, like I said, Henry Fool to me is the one that I always go back and just think you look at a film like if you look at filmographies, like that's the movie that I couldn't make. Like
right.
That is done by genius level auteurs. That movie is so goddamn good. So I don't know. Maybe I'd say maybe it's unfair to ask it of Unbelievable Truth, but just kind of trying to examine why Hartley doesn't pop.
I think his language and his visual style is harder to get into than like Tarantino, right? I mean,
Sure,
Tarantino,
right.
I think, has a very distinct way he wants people to be and speak in his films, very much like Hartley, but they're completely different, right? Right. And the same thing with sort of how these films look. I think they both have very specific looks, but again, I think it's a lot easier to sit down and just sort of fall into a Tarantino film. I think like The Unbelievable Truth, Trust, right, Simple Men, Amateur, these all ask a different thing of us, a different kind of work from us, and I don't think Hartley is ever going to like let us get away from that.
Maybe the sweetness of it in the time frame that it came out played against it, because if you look at the movies that were in the same range, like something like LaBute's In the Company of Men,
sure,
or
Keys to Tulsa. Who did Keys to Tulsa?
Anyway, but also like the Mangold stuff that was coming out, or who did The Yards? Was that
was James Gray.
James Gray, yeah.
Someone I like and you don't.
We'll get to that filmography. And then, or even someone, Mamet, which is another kind of stilted dialogue and distinct way of speaking. And that, whether you can say any one of these pop, but I guess you can point back to Whilt Stillman as the Whit. God damn it, Whit Stillman. I'm just gonna call him WS from here on out because I can't fucking roll that off my tongue. That's like a fucking Peter Piper peck a pickle peppers.
Where he did that filmography?
I don't know, that kind of like that level of I don't say the things that popped, I guess, were meaner, more cynical, hard-nosed, especially, and again, and Tarantino, Reservoir Dogs is 92, and then 4 is Pulp. So by the time that comes out,
years later,
anything that gets like notoriety is a Tarantino knockoff of bloody, violent, or it's something like LaBute where it's or Smith where it's a pop culture heavy. It's a very, very small window too, because by the time that, again, then when Scream hits, really is kind of the death knell of like you don't have Sale, like again maybe Sale. Of course, Sales was making movies before.
Yeah,
that
it was
kind of,
right
before the '90s wave. But like I don't know.
Because when was Lone Star?
Lone Star was 93, 92.
So it was right around the same time.
94.
Because Sales did Brother from Another Planet, and
he'd been
doing stuff for a while. That was kind of his apex. I mean, at least in the public conscious, maybe.
Yeah, I think just because.
Because Chris Cooper and and some other guy in Lone Star.
Good movie though.
He's all right.
Yeah. So
it is a good movie.
And it takes a minute for really Baumbach, because Baumbach really doesn't pop until he collaborates with Anderson.
Right.
I mean, and I like Baumbach's. I really love Kicking and Screaming. His second film, I think, got taken away from him, and they advertised it. It's got a very swingers-esque poster.
Yeah.
And it was like Eric Stoltz and Annabeth Suora, or however you say her name. I don't even know.
Shiora,
yeah. And then I think I forget his third film, Squid and the Whale, or something. But either way,
wait, yeah, because it was Squid and the Whale, and then it was Margot at the Wedding.
Right. But between that he had collaborated one with Life Aquatic with Anderson. So
I'm sorry, I'm looking at Mr. Jealousy was his.
Right, and that was the one. That was the Eric Stoltz one that looks like a swingers poster too. It's pretty. I've seen it. It's been a really long time.
Yeah. Was there anything else we wanted to say about The Unbelievable Truth? I mean, I don't know. I find it. I don't find it as maybe sweet as you do. I'm probably a little more cynical in a weird way, right? A little more jaded. I mean, I guess I don't think it's a melodrama in any way. I think it does have a, not a Fincherian look at the worldview, but or a Tarantino worldview, but I don't know. I mean, it does end in this kind of what comes next, right? This kind of nice ellipsis where everything isn't perfect. Everything isn't.
I wrote down
losing.
The unbelievable truth is like that asshole friend that you can't help but love.
Yeah, I like that. That's good. Yeah. I mean, less asshole, but yeah,
you're right.
Yeah.
It's maybe annoying is the slightly cloying and slightly annoying friend.
Yeah, and always saying weird things about the meaning of life and what's the point?
I guess my point to that is I can understand if this wasn't your cup of tea. This type of this movie.
Oh yeah. Oh no, I could too. Oh, 100%. Right. I fucking love this film. This stuff is very much my cup of tea.
Same.
Right. I mean, that kind of stilted, weird, yeah, it's great. And just the deadpan jokes and when she steals his wrench. She steals this giant wrench. It's just and the dad's like, well, you're never going to see him again. She's like, okay, one more time. He's like, no, I have to give him back his wrench. And she's like,
see, and that's
she's like, why do you have this?
And I think those types of things are what makes these films. And again, like you said, you can pick them up midway through. Yeah. I mean, I know you didn't actually say that. You said that we were going to look around and what the fuck is going on. But I do think the multiple viewings are rewarding of these two films. And it's kind of a shame. I've gone back to Trust a few times. I have not gone back to The Unbelievable Truth in a really long time, so I'm really glad I saw it again.
Yeah, I think it's great. All right, let's talk about Trust.
Family's like a gun. You point it in the wrong direction, you're gonna kill somebody.
Do you miss your kids?
Sure.
Do you hate your husband?
Absolutely.
Would you ever get married again?
Of course.
A family's got to stick together come hell or high water.
Carry this with me at all times.
Hand grenade?
Just in case.
Are you emotionally disturbed?
Maria, if you come home right now, Mom is going to stab you in the heart with a steak knife, okay?
Did you eat anything today?
No.
Sit down. I'll fix you something.
Tell me what you said. You heard what I said.
Tell me what you said, coward. Come on.
Your husband died of a heart attack.
No one dies of a heart attack. They die of disgust.
You're not the first woman in the world who's had a hard time.
I think it's kind of warm for this time of year, don't you think?
Damage to the ozone.
What is that?
Where the hell you been the last 10 years?
Married.
I like him the way he is.
How is he?
It was busted anyway.
Dangerous, but sincere.
Sincerely dangerous.
See this pin? You pull that. Wait 8 seconds and...
Do you know what the word empirical means?
Don't ask him. He thinks TV gives you cancer.
You can't know something unless you experience it first.
Do you trust me?
If you trust me first.
But every 7 strokes seems to land right on my thigh.
this is almost like a double bill,
Yeah,
right? I mean, these two go together so well.
I mean, he filmed this in 11 days, right?
Yeah.
And he wanted to work with Adrian again, so this is the reason why he like wrote this and it was like they didn't have to give much direction because the dialogue gave the direction that he wanted everybody to go in, kind of thing. So it's really, really impressive when you know the constraints of this film and how it was done, especially because Adrian seems like she's taken leaps and bounds as an actress from
from
like, she's so much more like confident.
And it's only like a year later.
Yeah.
I feel like I was going to say something else, but what the fuck ever. I don't know. So when high school dropout Maria announces she is pregnant, her father drops dead of a heart attack. Her mother throws her out of the house. Her boyfriend dumps her. She is left homeless and alone until she meets Matthew, an educated young man with a knack for fixing electronics and a severely principled worldview. When Maria accepts his offer of help, they begin a kind of relationship that allows both of them to change. So I want to go back to something I said earlier. Why wasn't Martin Donovan bigger? I love him in everything I see him in. Whenever he shows up in a movie or on a TV show, even for a few minutes, I get so excited. I just feel like everything he does is so intentional and delicious and amazing.
Yeah, I think it's just that 90s thing.
Yeah.
Like that, like even like you take Singles. Like the biggest star that comes out of the 90s is fucking Ben Stiller. Like or to this point Ethan Hawke, but Ethan Hawke didn't really pop until only as of late, till he becomes just like this silver fox kind of guy. Like it's not like who else? Matt Dillon has a middling career until There's Something About Mary, and then has another middling career. I mean, like he wasn't that good of an actor anyway. So and then like
he was no Kevin Dillon, that's for sure.
I mean, Cusack maybe would say anything, but like Cusack, I don't think he's really like a heartthrob headliner. He tries to do like things like Must Love Dogs and Serendipity and shit like that, but but I mean, and that's only once he gets to like the 2000s kind of era rom-com when they're all shit at that point. Who else is in Singles?
So one of the Baldwins in Singles? No.
I don't think so. I can't remember now who the entire cast of Singles was. Bridget Fonda doesn't.
I was going to say, Bridget Fonda.
So I mean, like, there aren't really any really
Campbell
sort of
Scott.
Campbell Scott. That's the other. And
he's also in like Spanish Prison.
Right. So he's the other Martin Donovan. Like those two, that is the Dermot Mulroney and Dylan McDermott.
But I mean, here's the thing.
Like Campbell Scott.
Okay, you like Campbell Scott more than I do, because when he comes on screen, I'm kind of like, whatever, right? I mean, I think he works really well in like Mammoth films because he can deliver that dialogue, and he can carry that rhythm in a way that maybe others can't. But he always sort of appears as like this sort of stuck up, I'm smarter than you, kind of too good for you kind of guy. Where Donovan, I just want to hang out with him no matter what he's playing. Right? I mean, even in Tenet, I'm like, can I just hang out with that guy for a while? He was in, have you ever seen the terrible Nancy Drew TV show that's like on the CW or whatever?
No,
anyway, it's fucking awful. Don't watch it. I haven't, surely. But he's in like a few episodes of the first season. And I'm like, what is he doing in this? But oh my God, he's wonderful. I mean, and he plays kind of a bad guy, but still.
Do you have his rundown? Like what his career looks like?
Donovan's? I had it. Hang on. Yeah, let me pull it back up. Because it's like not a lot of. He does a lot of stuff with Hartley.
Right.
He's constantly working. But let's see. And he's done a bunch of stuff. I mean, this is 120 credits on the most reliable source, IMDb.
Adrienne Shelly was the one who found him. Like, so she encouraged Hartley to, well, not found him, but like she encouraged Hartley to get him onto this film.
Okay.
Because she'd seen him in a stage production.
I was going to say he did. I mean, he and Burke both were like actors, right? Like really trained.
Well, I mean, if I was a regional theater person, fuck, how would you not love to have someone like Burke or Donovan on your, like in your stable? Like that can just do everything, that are handsome, that can play rugged, also can play a wide. It's that thing that maybe one played against. Like they don't look young enough to play teenage characters. So both of them, even Donovan in this movie, like still seems older than he actually is.
I know. No, he was in. I like he's been in a ton of stuff, but like small roles, right? So he was in Insomnia.
Yeah.
But as Hap Eckhart, do you remember who Hap Eckhart? Do you remember anybody except Maura Tierney in that movie?
I don't remember Maura Tierney.
He was in, I mean, yeah, it's a ton of stuff, but he's just got these small roles. He was never like the big guy. I mean, he was in The Ghost Whisperer for like 4 episodes. The Haunting in Connecticut. He was in that's the TV show, The Firm, not the movie. Yeah, I mean, so he's got over 100 credits.
He's just a guy who just shows up.
Yeah, but he's like way too good to be just a guy who shows up.
Were there other besides Hartley stuff? Were there other indie? I'm trying to remember because again, I do get Camel Scott mixed up with him too. Like it's
no. There's a lot of TV stuff. Let's see. A lot of these titles I don't believe they actually exist.
Bell Bottom Blues. That's not even anything.
No, it's an Eric Clapton song. So I don't like Eric Clapton.
No one does.
No, people that do are just wrong, right? Also, what happened to that guy? I mean, he and fucking Van Morrison. God.
They got vaccinated
Jesus.
and then their hands went
then
numb,
they
and
like
that was
lost
basically
their
it for
minds. And he was in Malcolm X as an FBI agent. I mean, that's like that's the role.
Kind of
so it was like all of that. Like I said, I don't know.
It is odd, especially because like there were so many of these floppy-haired guy roles available in the early 90s that he could have just stepped right into. Like he had that aesthetic of these types of movies where he was kind of nebbish and like could wear clothes that were slightly too big for him, but still be handsome and like look good smoking a cigarette and
carrying a hand grenade
right.
like he does in this film.
yeah. So it's weird that neither one of these guys were that Burke is probably best known for being on Law and Order SVU.
Or Rescue Me.
I hate Dennis Leary. But okay, sure. Rescue Me. Let's go with Rescue Me.
I'm just saying.
Let's prop up Dennis Leary somewhere.
No, I was not propping up Dennis Leary. I was propping up Mr. Burke.
Did we give a rundown of what this movie was about, or this trust was about?
Yeah.
Okay.
When Maria accepts his offer of help, they begin a kind of relationship.
That's right.
That both.
See, that
was like 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, they run together so much. I mean, not.
No. I know.
Not the plots, but I mean, like these movies really do. And watching them in such quick succession is makes them feel like they are part of the same.
Well, and there's a lot of the same people that overlap here too, playing different roles. I mean, it's almost like you have the same kind of. It's almost like the same characters at a different point in their lives, right? Which makes this really kind of interesting and compelling to see how he works within a universe, right? Yeah, the Hal Hartley.
Well, because the boyfriend's the boyfriend in both, right? Or no,
but he is in both.
Okay.
The boyfriend wants to. Now
so
I'm
who's
confused.
the football player? The football player is also in
Yes.
Unbelievable Truth, but he's the dad's coworker, the guy who
Yes,
because the other guy works
he's the guy that plays the guitar in the garage and can't fix anything.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't touch it. I just sent it back, right? Yeah. A lot of the same people playing very similar roles because then I think Emmett in Unbelievable Truth is like works at the repair shop in Trust. Right. And Martin Donovan just goes around punching him in the gut. Right. But again, I mean, it's a similar kind of like anti-rom-com. I mean, there's very little, I mean, I think, on purpose where Donovan is the character is so anti kind of love or anti-attraction when it comes to Maria. I almost called her Audrey from the earlier film. When it comes to her, that it's very much like not about love at all in this. And in fact, I mean, the title sort of alludes to how they both see, this is how they know they love each other, right? Is that they trust one another, right? But yet there's so much violence wrapped up in Donovan. I mean, he looks kind of nerdy, but also, very good looking.
He carries around a hand grenade.
Yeah, but he also just goes, like, he walks into this bar, right? Punches one guy, right? Another guy, like, runs away from him, and the bartender's like, hey, take it easy, Matthew. Take it easy.
Well, he
right?
walks in and is like, put this,
and he's
turn
like,
that shit off and put this on.
Put this cassette on and give me a bottle. And he's like, hey, it's on the house, right? And he puts on like Mahler's symphony, right? So it's, yeah. But again, this similar themes here in that we're looking at, all right, we have Matthew, this man who doesn't know how to sort of express his feelings or sort of profess his love. We have Matthew's father who can't say, how much he cares about his kid and that he doesn't want him to go and that he misses him. And then we have this mother, we have Maria's mother who, again, is like, I'll never forgive you for killing your father, even though it like wasn't her fault. But then in the same breath says, have you eaten? Sit down. I'll fix you something. Who wants to take care of her still? And so it's like all these people trying to figure out how to do the things they're supposed to do or they want to do, but they have no idea how to even do it.
Yeah.
It's just
and Martin, his dad, is borderline abusive, if not actually abusive.
No, he's totally. But he did it out of love.
Sure. He made him clean the bathroom over and over and over again out of love. Who do you think you are, leaving your cigarette butts in the on the sink? There are a lot of those when he invites her over to his house and she like spills the soup and is like burning the toast and like taking a shower and
he like freaks out.
Yeah. All of those moments, the interaction between, I like Trust better than like the Unbelievable Truth, but I do believe like we spend so much time with the two characters interacting in this, where in Unbelievable Truth there's a separation that exists right for the most of the movie, but like the gentleness that they both treat each other with that they don't get from outside is in this kind of like May, September, Romeo and Juliet type of situation is so nice. And they're so like, I don't know, there's the moment where, she's trying to find, there's a whole subplot here about a stolen baby. That really is, again, soap opera-esque. It doesn't really, it's not really germane to the main plot or to our main characters.
No, it's not.
It just gives them motivation for moving from place to place. But the moment that they're standing on the train, at the bottom of the train station steps, and they're looking up and she's talking about how, it's that she was reading this book and one of the characters was naive and he's like, you mean naive? And like, there's a tenderness and a sweetness to the way that they handle, like, and it's where that could obviously come off as condescending but the way that they interact with one another, there's that trust where she understands that he's not talking down to her. He's just helping her where he can. And it's like, as a moment of caring, he gets her at the thesaurus, and flowers, right? So it's I don't know, there, and like her, like calmness and, I don't know, just the way that she like carries herself. She's this girl who's pregnant and doesn't know if she's going to get an abortion or not. And she's, and Donovan is offered to marry her and to tell her so she doesn't have to go through all of that. That scene in the abortion clinic where the guy's like, she goes behind the wall. It's like, you come in here and you got all these problems, and then she goes behind the wall and she comes out and
everything's like it was before.
Everything's fine.
That scene, that's one of like the few flourishes that I think Hartley has, where we have Donovan in the middle and we get sort of like a pan to the left and there's like a line of women in this diagonal. We turn to the right, there's a line of men in the diagonal. Like the one guy just looks and smiles at Donovan. But yeah, that was good.
He does do a lot more visual jokes in this movie. Yeah. There's a lot of like with the TV sets and like so that sequence where he's like, Donovan is getting a job. He's handy, so he can repair things. So just like Burke is in the first movie. This is why again these kind of bleed together.
Yeah.
But Donovan won't work on. He doesn't want to work on television.
Refuses to work on TV.
Televisions are dumbing down
opiate
society.
of the masses.
Right. It's like I'll work on radios. I'll work on answering machines, but I'm not going to work on TVs. So it's like, and then the guy's like, we only need help with TVs, and he walks out. And there's like 30 people holding CRT TVs all the way down on the block.
Yeah. And doesn't he like bump into the one lady? And he just goes, it was busted anyway. And just like walks on. I really like going back to this kind of, her mispronouncing words or him buying her thesaurus. There's the moment where he comes back to her house. And she's like, look, you're staying with me. Your father's dangerous, whatever. And he finds her glasses. Mm-hmm. And he's like, you wear glasses? And she's like, well, I don't wear them. And he's like, well, why not? She goes, well, I look dumb in them and nobody likes librarians. And he's like, I like librarians. But there's this, then I think again, like this is this moment of tenderness that you had described earlier where he's like, it's okay, right? Like, I don't mind that you look this way. Pretty girls do wear glasses, actually.
This podcast,
right?
we can't talk about that.
We're always going to, yeah. It's one of the few instances in a film where, they're like, we'll make you prettier by putting glasses on and not taking them off and being like, oh, all of a sudden you're gorgeous now, right?
And it plays so well to that last scene, right? So where she puts her glasses on so she can see and be arrested and drive away. I mean, it's just, I don't know. This one is like, it's weird to me that I was reading the reviews about it. Ebert didn't like this one. But liked Unbelievable Truth, but didn't care for Trust. And I'm just like, why? Like it's like, I get it. It's a little bit more whimsical from a perspective of like I said, the flourishes are I think this is a filmmaker feeling himself out, and
he's got a bigger budget too.
Right. And he's filming it on 11 days, so doing what you want to do in this case and trying to and having as again, you've already filmed a movie with this crew, so the ability to do other things at this point. It's interesting to me that, and I think it really works in its advantage that it's not Burke again. I think that having a switch in the male lead but keeping Adrian really, really works. Adrian's obviously a different character, and she, it's an easy distinction between the two movies. Like watching this back and forth. I mean, what I'm saying is that she does a really good job of separating herself from, her character in Unbelievable Truth and in Trust. Even from the way that her hair is done, I don't know. There's just certain aspects to her physicality that
and I was gonna say Audrey has more confidence than Maria has. Any kind of like bravado Maria has is just that, right? It's a false kind of confidence. She really has no idea what she's doing. I mean, she's more adrift than Audrey is, even though Audrey was adrift. But Audrey at least had this kind of like, I don't know, way of thinking about things, way of sort of engaging with information that Maria doesn't, right? She's like, I'll just get married.
Right.
And then she kind of, I think, slowly grows into something else in this film through her meeting of Donovan and Donovan.
Right. Wyatt Steelman. The infamous director.
Matthew, right, yeah. No, the character Matthew, right? She's able to sort of find ways to build herself into something else that she wants to be, right? He doesn't do it, right? But kind of shows her that I'm trying not to give the male too much credit here, right?
Sure,
I mean,
right.
because I don't think that that's what's going on in the film. I just want to make sure that I say it right. I mean,
I think there's so much.
I say things good.
I think there's so much more going on in this than also with Peg's character and the fact that she's divorced and lost her kids but this idea of there's a beauty in persevering or continuing on, right? And so like this group of women that live together have all been like, her husband's dead, her oldest daughter is living with her because she's been basically run out of her house.
Yeah.
The divorce lawyer got all the money, and she's been painted as an unfit mother. And her other daughter, her younger daughter Maria, was at the beginning of the movie. She's just basically like, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to drop out of high school. I'm going to get married. My boyfriend is going to play football on a football scholarship and go to the pros, and that's how we're going to make it.
Yeah.
And then obviously all of that starts to unravel when her father dies. But there's and then the acceptance of Martin and his violence and being able to kind of squash that, but also like never really asking him to stop carrying a hand grenade around for suicide purposes. Right? I mean, so
in fact, she gets more upset with him when he becomes more quote unquote normal or acceptable.
Right.
She's like, "Why are you watching TV? You never watch TV." He's like, he's kind of just like giving up.
Right. Yeah, their paths are kind of altered.
But then of course they come back together. Yeah, I really like it.
Yeah, I think Falco is really good.
Yeah.
It's surprising to see her in a non-Sopranos, non-Nurse Jackie kind of role, especially so young. But she really, really does well in this. This Yeah, these are just really, really solid, fun movies, and I think they're like, I do think there's a difficulty to them, but I don't think it's so much where it's not worth the effort, right?
Right.
And
right.
even if you don't like Unbelievable Truth or Trust, I think you'll find something valuable in the other.
Yeah.
That is just, again, it does. It sounds kind of weird to say it, but we don't make.
That's what we do here.
Right. We don't make movies like this anymore.
No, 100% we don't. So we were talking about like films that wouldn't be made today. You can't. I don't think you could make a film like this today. I don't think that anybody's doing stuff like this. And as I'm saying it, I'm trying to think of films that are actually doing this. But I don't. And I don't know how much of an appetite there would be for films like this.
And I think Hartley said that to himself. Like, he's kind of like, there was a window, and now that window is closed as far as like these types of these types of movies. But yeah, I can't think of the last time I've seen like a really just new, good, genuine, heartfelt, simple indie film
without being saccharine and sentimental, because
Right.
it's not
Or
those
purposeful,
things,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, like this, because I don't think we would say either one of these is like got a message to send out,
No.
right? It's like, so like there are independent films that are out there, but like they don't exist like this anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm like, because I'm trying to think of like the things that like that the auteurs that we talked about have done recently. I mean, Anderson's off in his own world at this point. Baumbach is, it doesn't do this.
He's
like
doing stuff at Netflix.
Right. I mean, Gerwig, like, even like, I don't even like, so let's take something like maybe Lady Bird or
Right. Well, I mean, but this is, or Little Women, but
Right.
this goes back to something we said before, like those independent films that like the Hartley would be making or the Cassavetes would be making are being made at A24 Neon, and those have a kind of look to them, right?
Yeah.
I don't even mean like in edge, but they have a sort of color palette, a sort of, okay, this is great, but we need you to do this, right? There's a slickness to it. There's a kind of, knowing sincerity to a lot of these things that these films don't have.
Yeah. When's the
Right.
last
And
time you saw like a new, just kind of talky, melodrama? Right? That was simplistic, right?
Right. Right, because there's nothing like really fancy over the top here, right? I mean, they talk a lot, they say things. I find them fascinating, right? More fascinating than Dawson's Creek, but that's kind of it. I mean, there's nothing. Yeah, it's straightforward. It looks. I mean, there's nothing fancy about the way it looks either. There's nothing sort of Fincher,
and even the heralded,
Fincher-esque about like.
right, and even the heralded, quote unquote indie darlings are still putting together $30 million films. I mean,
Right.
There's not,
right.
Like, I don't know. This feels like it was filmed, in someone's backyard with, not to downplay it or not to.
No, but it feels like it was sort of done in the neighborhood.
But like, who does Clerks anymore?
Right.
Like, I mean, any of those types of like just simplistic slice of life, we're going to put you in a spot kind of movies that
here's some characters and let's watch them interact.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll find one. Listener, tell us who we're missing, who we're forgetting.
Interesting tidbit about this film. It was filmed on a $600,000 budget, right? I think with joint kind of British and American production companies. Made about 400 worldwide. It was re-released in 2008 in South Korea.
Really?
It made $1,278.
That's not bad.
Anyway,
what a weird
I know
anecdote.
I know.
Like, that's,
well, I'm your guy.
No, yeah, I mean, I'm just like, that's a story I want to know about.
I
like,
know.
Who
I
was
want to
like,
know
was
more.
like, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-release a movie that, you could. And I wonder if Hartley was involved. I guess like,
maybe there was like a weird kind of like fan club in South Korea, and they were like, you know what? Let's do like a special screening, like a rep screening of Trust.
and like just that one. That's a weird,
not like the whole, all of it. Just Trust. All right.
But this would be fun. Like this, we talked about, and this is all off mic stuff. But this would be another like fun weekend trilogy to program, just to do a Hal Hartley
like
Long
retrospective.
Island.
Even just like a Long Island trilogy retrospective.
Because the films play so well together. And it, you know, there are distinct cuts. Like, I mean, as far as like by the time you get to amateur, you're not going to show that one with these three necessarily, but
right.
But like a trilogy of the Long Island trilogy and the Henry Fool trilogy, would be a really fun like back to back Saturday Sunday.
Yeah, that would be really fun. All right, did you do some recommendations?
I did.
Oh my gosh!
No, I'm back on it, man.
You're
I'm
back on
it.
track.
I don't know why I forgot, and you know.
No, it happens. It happens. Look, you got things going on. You're busy. I mean, I don't have anything. I just like sit around and wait for this podcast. All right. What's your?
All right, my number one, and it's hard because these movies are almost identical, right? So I mean, like, we can do Killers first.
Yeah, let's do the Killer.
Killer. Mine is Jim Jarmusch's Ghost Dog: The Way of the Samurai.
Oh, okay.
I want to watch something that's much fucking better than this movie.
That's a good one.
That's what this movie is.
Yeah, because I just put Les Samurai. I'm like, just go fucking watch Les Samurai, right? But yeah,
right.
But that's a good one too.
And it's, I mean, and obviously Jarmusch was influenced by Les Samurai.
Sure.
As well, so
sure, but again, like he did something different with that. Being influenced by something and then just doing the same thing are different things.
Right? You know what I llove about Les Samurai is whatever restoration that they've done still has kept that kind of graininess to it.
Yeah.
That kind of just you can almost just like taste the fucking film that's
I
coming off.
love grain. Even in like film photography, like still photography,
right?
I will still shoot on like grainy film. I love grain, especially black and white.
But yeah, it's
that was weird.
It's so what I love about Les Samurai is the ending is so delicious. It's like, well, because one, they shoot in a fucking active nightclub.
right.
Like, you wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for us. Oh, yeah, no, yeah, you would, because he wasn't carrying bullets. It's just, and then, like, and the fucking, like, the band comes back out and picks up the cello and, like, the guy drums, and that's it. It's so much fun. Like, it's so, like, I would love to, like, read about just that scene, because, you know, the piano player, it just looks him up, it's like, why, you know, I thought we were, you know, and it's like, and he's like, why are you doing this? Because I was paid to. And then boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
And, you know, the look on her, and it's obviously, you know, 60s flair. It's a misdirect, right? But, like, you get that surprised look on her face and then realize that she's not dead and that he's dead. And, like, but again, they shot into this, like, active nightclub that she's playing in. And again, they go to and it's such a silly, it's kind of a moment of like just kind of silliness, and I know it wasn't meant to be that. It just seems kind of silly. They're opening up you'd never fucking do that. You'd never show the potential victim of a murder. Well, he had no bullets, so looks like we shot a guy. Looks like we just murdered a guy, but we have no way of knowing that.
I love that Melville sort of like trio of Les Samurai, Les Cercle Rouge, and flic. I mean, there's those three are just so much fun.
Another trilogy would be great to program.
I know. Yeah. And then, okay. All right. What did you do for the...
So my two for the other ones, and again, these are a little harder edged, and so it's hard to find movies that are kind of like this unless you... but I did Jane Campion's Sweetie.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's kind of a family that's in kind of crisis and a kind of a misdirect as well.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. So was that like for Unbelievable Truth or just for like both of them?
Just kind of both of them.
That's kind of how I looked at these two. So the first one I'll give you is Day Trippers. Directed by Craig Mattola. Yeah. That is like the most Long Island movie ever. Ever. But it's so good. Speaking of Campbell Scott, right? And then early Liev Schreiber and Parker Posey. Whatever, right?
We're gonna make up names for all of these people we talk about today. So
No
it's cool.
shit, right? I practiced my vocal exercises today, so yeah. So no, I really like that film. I don't know, like Mattola's career after that just did not do much for me, but I loved the Day Trippers. Yeah.
My last one is Benjamin Ross's The Young Poisoner's Handbook.
Oh.
It's not really like these in a sense, but it does have that kind of like, have you ever seen it? It is a hard watch. And it's one of those ones that I saw. It's very much a night. So think The Butcher Boy from Neil Jordan. But it's kind of, it's based on a true story. And it's about this kid who is obsessed with he was obsessed with pornography, but he was also obsessed with like poisoning his family. And so he got this thalidomide recipe, and he would like, and so like his family would start to kind of deteriorate, like in the sixth, like, what's her face in The Sixth Sense, where she was kind of like losing, she was throwing up all the time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a hard watch from that sense, because like there's a lot of like, but it's played so tongue in cheek and like funny. But yeah, it's I really like it.
Okay.
But it's not something I recommend all that often, because it's like it's kind of disturbing, but I kind of like that weird like dark humor to it.
Yeah.
But anyway, he gets arrested and put in like this like mental institution, and he gets out and does it again. But yeah, it's basically this kid who's like this kind of lovable kid who's a poison, he's a murderer, but he's also like put upon by society, and no one really understands him.
I'm gonna have to find this and watch it. That sounds interesting.
Graham Young is the I think the character's name, and that's the actor who was in it, and he's been in other stuff. But Benjamin Ross, the only thing else he did of note is he directed that TV movie RKO 281.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then that's really about it.
Okay. Well, my choice for this is maybe a little obvious, but it's Buffalo 66.
Yeah, that was on
okay. Was one of your yeah. I wondered. I was wondering if I was going to hear that come from you. I mean, I think Vincent Gallo, or current day Vincent Gallo notwithstanding, I absolutely loved this movie when I first saw it. And then saw it at the Texas Theater with like a full crowd, and I think I've said this to you before, but I'm like, I didn't understand why everyone was laughing so hard. I mean, like, I know that it's humorous and darkly funny, but I'm like, it's not laugh out loud funny to me.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
It's more of like a soul crushing funny.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I had a hard time with them. Like, oh, that was hilarious. I'm like,
dude,
no, what?
Right. What's wrong with you?
This was just like, several years ago, but yeah.
Have you seen the trailer for the new Jeffrey Wright movie?
American Fiction?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not comfortable with everyone laughing in that trailer either.
No.
I'm like, what the fuck are we? I'm like, this is not, I get it, but like, this is not hilarity.
Look, I'm so excited to see that film.
I am as well, but I don't know if I can see it with a crowd.
It's because it's not meant to, no. Like, but if you're laughing, you're part of this problem, right? Like, you don't get it then, right?
Yeah. That's what I'm like, it's one thing to do like, sorry to bother you, so surreal that like it didn't really elicit that type of like and the conceit is so
it's so sort of like magical realism too.
Right,
I mean, it's really
so having David Cross and Patton Oswalt as voices of black characters, like, and so I can see where that automatically comes off as funny. The blackening is intended to do that.
Yes.
This, I was just like, I don't know why.
But I wonder too if like the trailer's cut, trying to make people. I mean, I don't know.
Maybe, but I mean this like, I mean this idea of like white people in the industry not knowing the name of a do-rag. Like,
I know.
So this idea of people behaving like this should be appalling, not funny.
Yeah.
And so I'm worried about the tone, and like I am very excited for the movie because I fucking love Jeffrey Wright.
Yeah.
But
is he one of the like most underrated actors? I mean, I know that I talk about Léa Seydoux and Adele Exarchopoulos, but as being underrated. Jeffrey Wright.
No, I mean like he's
amazing.
I think that's one of those things where it's just his choices. They're cleaning the windows in the back, so I'm just seeing like a Muppet come across the thing. But like when he jumped off in Basquiat, like and then from there it's just been I mean like the only thing that's held him back is just the movies that he had to do for paychecks, right? I mean like things like doing The Invasion and he's done a handful of them where he's just a guy, right? But yeah, no, absolutely, he's unbelievable. Made Claire Forlani look like a good actress at some one point. And maybe she was. I shouldn't badmouth her because I really, 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 really loved her portrayal in Basquiat. And she wasn't terrible in Mystery Men, but like when you get to Antitrust, I'm just like, ooh, what happened? And then she was in The Rock. Yeah, she was in The Rock.
Oh, right. Right.
But yeah, talk about a gore, like a girl, and then she was in Mallrats too. But like, talk about a person who like, I want to deep dive. Like if I ever had a thesis or like a doctorate that I would write something about, it would be about this Hollywood window for women, and where if you, it is like, I know that it's changed maybe a little bit now because you see like Scarlett Johansson actually have, but I mean, like, but of course she's still young and she's been acting forever, but like, and I was looking at the actress in the movies today, which for whatever reason I've thought of something else, so I can't think of her name.
You mean Adrienne Shelley?
Adrienne Shelley, but her life was cut short. But she stopped acting though too. So
because she had her big break with the movie Waitress. Well,
Right.
I mean, she
was going to have a big break,
right. But yeah, she had stopped acting and gone into directing and writing rather than. But I mean, because she is another one. Where, I mean, after the Hartley stuff, and what else did she?
Right. But like Forlani was like, it's Hollywood has this tendency to try to make you happen. And it happens to men too. Like you look at Brendan Sexton III, like who was in Boys Don't Cry and Empire Records. And Welcome to the Dollhouse. Like that guy had like a very, very brief window of movie making. And then he comes back up on other things, but like, and then Norman Reedus, the guy who was in Walking Dead, like he was a guy who was supposed to be like the next fucking
with like
dude.
the Boondock Saints
and
8mm. 8mm.
Yeah.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
And then like he doesn't do anything. But like I can remember reading in Entertainment Weekly, and I may be forming this memory in my mind that doesn't really exist, but about like these next generation of actors that are gonna, and like Norman Reedus was on there because of 8mm. And I'm just like, well, yeah, no. Then he just kind of disappeared until he did, Boondocks.
Right.
But Boondocks was kind of under the radar, and then
that became like a cult kind of
right.
hit, right?
And then Walking Dead. But yeah, I don't know how we got off on Claire Forlani, but because we're talking about Jeffrey Wright.
Yeah.
And the uncomfortable laughter of American Fiction. I don't know. I'm gonna have to see that like in a midday, matinee, because I just don't. The way that the crowds are reacting to it is very, very. It's making me very, very uncomfortable.
And well, I mean, and I saw The Whale with the crowd and told everybody to fuck off. I'm like, why the hell you all cry? So yeah.
Well, I
picked a fight with the lady next to me
and walked out. So that was.
and Tar, I saw Tar with the crowd and almost got in a fight. With
Tar, I did not see. So Tar, I saw alone.
All right. Well, look. Anyway, we will cover American Fiction on this podcast, on this very parish. So stay tuned for that. Next time, though, we're going to talk more Hartley. Right, we're going to talk Simple Men. We'll
also be talking about the Fort Worth Film Club screening of Smoke Signals, Native American Appreciation Month. I don't know how you feel about that movie, but I think it'll be fun to talk about. Also, I'm looking forward to the conversation. I'm hoping that it's a good crowd for that screening, because there are some things that I do want to dig a little deeper in, other than just the feel-goodiness of the movie that it presents itself as.
Yeah. So me too. And maybe we'll have some snippets of that to plug into an episode in the future. Who knows?
Yeah, things are crazy.
Look, those of you that listen know how we do things. It's a high wire act here. There's no net. That's how we like it.
All kinds of plates spinning
and falling.
Right.
And breaking. Someone's got to clean this shit up. Okay, Jason, anything else?
I think that's it.
All right. Until next time, thank you all for listening.
And be thankful and keep screaming. You have been listening to Why Does the Wilhelm Scream with your hosts, Brock and Jason. If you liked today's episode, do us a favor and rate, review, and subscribe in whatever application you use to consume podcasts these days. You can reach us by visiting whydoesthewilhelmscream.com. If you are in the DFW area, we would love to see you at a Fort Worth Film Club event. You can learn more about those and find a full schedule at fortworthfilmclub.com. And you can learn about my foundation and how we are trying to foster the next generation of film lovers at realhousefoundation.org. That's REEL housefoundation.org. Till next time.